Well, Brexiters obviously say, we've already voted and you're trying to subvert the nation's will. Now, first of all, this is an appropriation of the nation because the nation didn't vote for Brexit. 52% of the nation who voted for Brexit. In other words, 52% of the electorate, which is not the nation. And so, especially when the margin is so wafer thin, in fact, as proven over the course of this last week, the margin is thinner than what even Jacob Rees-Mogg would accept or would be prepared to accept for the Conservative leadership. Of course, if you recall, Jacob Rees-Mogg has said that the number of MPs that voted against Theresa May, a third of the Parliamentary Conservative Party, therefore he's saying that 2/3 of the Conservative Party supporting Theresa May is not sufficient for as support for a Conservative leader, and she should resign. So 2/3 is not sufficient, and yet 52% is sufficient for Brexit. And so let's stop saying you're subverting the nation's will. No one has the right to speak as if they speak on behalf of the nation, except the nation in another vote. 52% of the electorate voted for Brexit and 48% of the electorate voted against it. Now, on such a pivotal, constitutional and historic course directional change in the history of this country, I would suggest to you that 52% minus 48% isn't the nation. It is a too slim a margin over such an important question. But nevertheless, yes, Brexit has won by 4%. And for 2 years, the country has been trying to deliver for that 4% difference. For 2 years, the country has failed. And currently, there aren't many options left on the table in an attempt to honour that 4% difference. And so I would argue to you that actually it would be suicide, collective, national suicide, for us to go down with this sinking ship over a 4% margin without considering all other options. And so it's not subverting the will of the people. It's indeed attempting to re-gauge the will of the people after 2 years being much more informed, much wiser. And of course, secondly, I would say, because Brexiters would argue that the question's already been asked. How many referenda are you going to call until you have a satisfactory answer? That would be their second objection. And I would respond by suggesting to them, this is a different question. The question this time would be to consider Theresa May's deal, not leave or stay, but what does leave look like? Leave was never defined in the original deal. You could even have a no-deal option on the second vote. And of course, you could have the remain option. That leaves 3 options with a transferable vote to make sure that no one's vote is wasted. So there is a way to do this without splitting the leave vote, Brexiters. But think about it. What a unifying way to bring everyone back together, because currently Remainers aren't happy with Theresa May's deal. Brexiters aren't happy with Theresa May's deal, and none of us have a strong enough faction to force through what we want. Now, when you're in a situation like that, when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, you've got 2 options there. When you're in that scenario, when an immovable object is hit by an unstoppable force, you either have a total eruption of chaos, like the Big Bang, or we all put the brakes on and stop that collision happening. None of us have a large enough faction. Now I'm talking, when I say us, I'm talking those who subscribe to any one particular view of what should happen next or over another. Whether it's Theresa May's backers, whether it's People's Vote backers, whether it's WTO rules, hard Brexit backers, none of those 3 factions have a strong enough support base in Parliament or even in the nation to force through what they want. And times like these, therefore, call for options that allow all of us to say, OK, we need a dispute resolution mechanism to decide what we want to do next. Now, what, if not a dispute resolution mechanism, is a vote? That's precisely what voting is. Voting isn't an opinion. It's a dispute resolution mechanism. That's why voting was created. That's why democracy is so great, because it stops us going to civil war. So all this alarmist talk about another vote will cause a civil war. No, voting has always stopped war, because it's only by voting do we stop, do we say, look, there's a way to resolve this. Let's have a ballot instead of fighting each other. That's why democracies are more stable than non-democracies, because voting is a dispute resolution mechanism. And if anybody can ever give an example of a dispute that cannot be resolved at the moment in this country, it's the dispute over Brexit. And so yesterday, I was wearing a Christmas jumper, and it was a beautiful, wonderful thing to behold. It said on the front of it in blue, it said, "All I want for Christmas is you," but obviously spelled EU, right? And I'm not going to sing that. But the point I'm making is, that is my view as to how it's a wish. That's what I want. But I know I can't get that. By the way, the jumper got stolen. Somebody liked it so much, I took it off and put it on the side, and it got nicked. And I said to my friends, well, at least it was a Remain thief and not a Brexit thief, because I can feel slightly more inclined to forgive them. But anyway, my point is, that's a Christmas wish. I'm not going to get that by forcing it through. The only way I recognise I can get my wish is if I resort to a mechanism that everybody can agree on. And that's the nature of democracy, that voting is the dispute resolution mechanism that all of us, whether we like it or not, agree to abide by. And it's why I think that returning to a people's vote over the final status is the only practical, moral and rational way forward. And I suggest Brexiters and Remainers all get behind it. And you don't have to worry much about the question, because it can be done with a transferable vote.